Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is John, and I got the inspiration to start this YouTube channel because of an upcoming trip to the Arctic Ocean by motorcycle. Little did I know that I would suffer my first motorcycle crash pretty much ever in my entire life. I've been riding most of my life, and it's quite jarring and gets you thinking a little bit. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the crash itself and a little bit about the after effects, the physical, the mental, and what can you do when you're have such downtime, just sitting there thinking and not being able to do the things that you love to do. So let's talk about the crash a little bit. So I live on a 2.5 mile dirt road that is not maintained because there are two government agencies fight over it. So nobody maintains it. It is what it is. So it had just rained several days before, and it was drying pretty good. But as cars drive on it, they leave ruts and ridges in the road. So I was on my 2024 KTM 790 Adventure coming back from a couple of sessions, and just like any other day, I was riding along. I've probably done that road at least 200 times. I'm riding along, I'm probably a half mile from home. Nothing looks crazy on the road. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I am gasping for air and just wondering what just happened, because I have no idea. I wasn't going recklessly fast. I was probably doing 25. Probably not the greatest tires for that road, but I had done it so many other times. I had Pirelli Scorpions on, the street model that came with the bike, and they were still in pretty good shape. What I think happened is, I think as things dry, there was probably just a little ridge, and maybe I was swaying from right to left, and maybe the front tire hit that ridge. It just kind of washed out and just went down and slid. The bike slid about 5 feet. I ended up, in my foot in a mud puddle on the side. There was no mud in the middle of the road where the bike was, and I didn't hit any mud with the bike. But somehow, some way, I ended up, and I called my neighbor, Tim, and I said, "Hey, I'm down. I just crashed. I didn't know if I had broken bones. I didn't know what was going on." It was quite an experience. And the first thing I thought was, is this going to jeopardize the trip to the Arctic Ocean? Because that is a dream of mine that I've had ever since I've been riding motorcycles. Tim luckily was home. He was there within minutes, picked up the bike, because I certainly couldn't in my condition. I knew something was hurting in my back. I just didn't know exactly what. And he picked up the bike. I was able to ride it the last half mile very, very slowly home. It was in fine condition. There were some marks on the skid plate. And on these bikes, the gas tank's hanging low, so the skid plate comes up to protect the side gas tanks down low, and that had, a lot of marks on it, as you would expect, because that bike slid like 5 feet, and you could see an orange line because it's an orange skid plate. It's an AXP, kind of made of some kind of a hard plastic material. You just see an orange line, just 5 feet, like somebody just took an orange crayon and just drew it 5 feet in the dirt. And my handguard, the plastic handguard, got scratched up and it was out of place, and it was easy to just move it back. And then my pannier rack got a little bit scuffed. But other than that, the bike seemed to be fine. It was leaking a little bit of gas, but that's normal. They have a pressure release valve, so that wasn't a big deal. So I rode it home, and I just walked around and was still just in a daze, really. And I didn't know, should I go to the ER, urgent care? And of course, we all know the ER is very expensive, so I'm trying to avoid that if possible. I do have insurance, but it's still very expensive. So Tim said he would drive me to the urgent care. It was a Sunday, and thankfully there was one open. Of course, we go there, and they're like, no X-rays here. So at that point, I just said, let's just go to the ER. So I went to the ER, and at the ER, they admitted me very, very quickly. Didn't have to wait at all. Like I was in less than 5 minutes. They took my information. First thing they did was give me a bunch of X-rays. And I should say, this is only the second real major accident I've ever had in my life on any kind of bike or motorcycle. The first one, I went over the bars mountain biking in Moab, and I landed on my shoulder and I broke my scapula, which is one of the hardest bones in the body to break. And I rode 10 miles out with a broken scapula and went to the ER. So I think this is about the only second time in my life I've had to go to the ER, thankfully. So I feel lucky in that sense. So they did some X-rays. Basically, it revealed that I have 3 fractured ribs. It felt very similar to my scapular injury in the back. It's on the same side, so I didn't know. But he said you have 3 fractured ribs, and I just looked at him and I said, I have this big trip coming up. Am I going to be able to go? And he just said, listen to your body. Well, when he says that, to me, that's a green light. And anybody who's been in that position knows what I'm talking about. I mean, I don't want to injure myself further, obviously, but I'm going to have to feel pretty bad. So all they gave me was Tylenol and some ibuprofen at the ER and a bunch of scripts for some painkillers. So I went and had those filled. One of them was morphine. I don't think I've ever had morphine, as far as I know. I took one of those the first night, and that was it. I hate taking that kind of stuff. Basically, for the last week, it happened a week ago today, been taking some painkillers of just consist of ibuprofen and Tylenol, and there's something called metocarbamol that's supposed to help with spasms and pain, which I've taken a couple of nights. But right now, I'm just taking ibuprofen as needed, so I am getting better, thankfully. When you crash, you start replaying it in your mind and what did I do? How did I crash? And you kind of do these mental gymnastics of replaying that crash and just trying to figure out what went wrong, what did I do, all those things that kind of you ask yourself. And I usually get upset with myself when I when I crash like that, just because I feel like it could have been avoided. And truthfully, pretty much all crashes like that, when you're just by yourself, probably can, if you come right down to it. But again, my crash to riding ratio is pretty good. So I guess I don't want to complain too much, but we'll just say inconvenient timing, and we'll leave it at that. The questions that they keep coming back, because you're laid up, you can't do the things you love to do, you can't work out, you can't mountain bike, you can't do any of those things. You're kind of just down, really. And that's really the worst part, is the recovery time is not just the mental part. It's the physical part. It's the pain, it's the healing, it's the mental, the physical, it's all those things. I want to talk a little bit about how do you get past that, because I don't think we talk a lot about, what happens when we crash. We talk a lot about gear, and this can help you in a crash. And, I see lots of those YouTubers talking about that, but I don't really see a lot of people, and maybe it's out there, I just haven't seen it, but talk about, okay, once you've crashed, what do you do? And how do you handle it? Do you think about giving up? In this case, motorcycling, but it could be anything. It could be, I'm not gonna mountain bike anymore. I'm not gonna ski anymore, whatever it happens to be. Because once your health starts to be affected, then that's a big deal. And for me personally, my health is number one. And yes, I take some calculated risks by riding a motorcycle in general. I will say that I did have full armor on. So I had a Klein Marrakesh jacket on that held up very well, and I think probably is part of the reason that my injuries weren't worse. I just had bought it a few weeks before, and it has the D30 Ghost armor in there that's supposed to stiffen up. It's very flight and flexible, but when you crash, it's supposed to just really stiffen up. And I would tell you that my shoulder did not feel tender, did not feel bruised or anything. And I hit square on it. And I have a streak of mud, just or dirt rather, going down my arm. And that's the only mark on the jacket. The jacket held up amazingly well. And so I'm super thankful for that. I always ride with full armor on, no exceptions, and a helmet. I don't think I hit my head. I don't think my legs were even touched at all. There was no really dirt on my pants. It was just the jacket. So I must have gone down and kind of slid on my shoulder to my arm, just kind of slid a little bit, is what I think happened. And I'm lucky that I didn't get any broken bones. So once you're down and you get the diagnosis, okay, you have these 3 fractured ribs, 4, 5, and 6 are the names of the ribs apparently. What do you do? And so in my mind, I'm like, how do I get better as quick as possible? That's how do I get back out there? I'm dying to get back on the bike. I'm dying to resume my daily activities, my life. I am able to walk and hike 4 or 5 miles. So that's good with very minimal pain at this point. So I think I will be ready for that launch on June 14th is when we leave for the Arctic Ocean in Alaska. So how do you get through it? And I think a couple things that have worked for me are making a list of things that have interested you for a long time, but maybe you just never sat and wrote them all down. Like a bucket list kind of thing. Thinking about adventures you may want to do in the future when you are healed and better to do, I think is a great way to do it. And I also think watching other people's videos. I'm a huge believer in that. So I think kind of watching somebody else on some of these trips and all that, and I know it may be depressing because you're not able to do it, but I think it gives you something to look forward to, knowing that you're going to be bounced back and be back on the road. So I think those are really, really important things to do, and just helps like, hey, I'm not down forever. This isn't permanent. Like I can be back out there. A lot of people start to think about and consider, do I want to keep doing this? As we're all getting older, is this something that I want to keep doing? Whatever the sport is or the activity is, you may not want to do it anymore because you're like, you know what, I'm just not willing to take this risk. I'm not willing to go through, another ER visit and some broken bones and all that. And some people are going to make that choice. I've had a lot of people talk about selling their motorcycles because they've had kids or they got married or they had a friend die. Like I had a friend die when I was in my early 30s and he wasn't wearing a helmet, but I got spooked and I sold my motorcycle, and that lasted several years. And then I just got the bug again. Once you have the bug, you always have it, as those of you who ride know. There are those occasions where you just feel like, I think my number's coming. I happen to live in an area that's very low traffic. It's not very populated. It's northern Arizona. So I don't really ride in those rush hour things. I'm more afraid of animals than anything. Some, deer running across the road in front of me more than another driver. Everybody says it's the other person, it's the other person. And I think there's some truth to that. But when you don't really live in an area where there's a ton of traffic, or you can get out on the open roads really quickly and easily without encountering any traffic, I think, it's really not about the other person. To me, it's about it's yourself, right? About what's the right or error here. And, and I'm asking myself that question and the conclusion I've come to is I shouldn't have drifted, because if there was that ridge there and I went back and looked at it and there certainly was like a ridge about this big, I shouldn't have drifted across. And because I think my front tire got just stuck right there, and I continued to lean the bike, and I think so pulled that down, and I think the bike went down. So that was my error. And I'm gonna obviously first of all put new tires on that bike that are more dirt oriented, because every time I ride a motorcycle, I have to do 2.5 miles of dirt out and 2.5 miles back. So I should have at least 50-50 tires on all my bikes. Then there's the unexpected things, the animals. You know, I've had antelope. We have antelope here. I've had antelope 20 feet in front of me, just a pack of 10 of them just go right across the road, you know. And so those things are unexpected, and you just can't really predict or prepare for that, other than just to be alert. That's really all you can do. But animals are going to do what they're going to do. So they're a little more expected. And I think people are a little bit more predictable, but yes, they're unpredictable too, in a way. So I think those are the things that I think about, and that are like, hey, do I want to keep taking this risk? And I have now 3 motorcycles. I've never had 3 motorcycles before. I bought a motorcycle to go to the Arctic Ocean. I bought a 2024 Honda Africa Twin DCT, which I've never had an automatic shifting bike before. I love it. I love that bike, and I love all my bikes. I have a KLX 300, and I have the KTM. Yeah, does it get you thinking? Sure, it should get you thinking. Doesn't mean you should need to give up your sport. You know, anytime something happens that causes you a significant injury, I think you do need to look at things and evaluate, is this something that I want to keep doing? I am very much looking forward to the trip to the Arctic Ocean via the Dalton Highway in Alaska. Just a little preview of that. 3 of my friends are driving in a vehicle. They wanted to go, but they don't have motorcycles, so they're going to drive. So they're going to be carrying a lot of the gear, so I don't have to take side panniers, which is nice. So I'll just have a top box and a tank bag, and I am going to get a drone for the trip, so there'll be some cool drone footage. But I want to do things a little bit differently on this channel. I want to kind of go behind the psychological aspect of some things. I am a therapist. That's what I do for a living. But I also love to do fun and adventurous things. I play in a band. I run a hiking group here in town, and obviously ride motorcycles. So that is what I love to do. It is what it is. I feel I'm a big believer in, you live every day like it's its last. I'm not getting any younger, and I don't know how long I'll be able to do all these things. So I'm going to do them. I'm going to do them till I can't. And, you know, everybody talks about going on a cruise. I just want to, when I can't do anything else, I'll go on a cruise, whenever that is. Same with golf. Nothing against any of you who play golf, but I look at that the same way. Like, I'll do that when I can't do these things. Golf is not going to give me the same feeling that, you know, mountain bike, motorcycle, you know, or whatever else hiking does. So those are my things of choice, and everybody's got their things. But I think as long as you're staying active and being mobile and creating momentum in your life of some sort, I think you're good. You know, those are my choices. Those are the things that I decide to do. You know, as my dad just hit 90 years old today, you know, it makes me think of, you know, my future. And he's super active still and works out, but it does get you thinking, you know. And a lot of people don't like to sit and think, and they keep go, and that's okay. But it's also maybe somebody's telling you, hey, maybe you needed to stop, look at your direction, where you're going, where you're headed, and think through some stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. Matter of fact, I would call that healthy at the end of the day. I hope that you subscribe and like this video. If you got anything out of it, there's going to be more coming, and also a little loadout video of what I'm taking to the Arctic Ocean. I've always wanted to do a YouTube channel. I just never thought I'd start like this with my first real motorcycle crash in my life. So if you want to come along, appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.